Going to take a brief commercial break. We've been discussing the scandalous actress Hedy Lamarr. She has just escaped the clutches of her controlling husband and has boarded the SS Normandie for the United States, and hopefully has a new career in Hollywood waiting on her. But before we get back into her life, Adrian is going to tell us about the Normandy because the ship was amazing. At least
was,
according to the pictures that I've seen.
Yeah. I've never been on a cruise ship, but I've always dreamed about being a passenger on one of those ocean liners. And
Not a Carnival one, though.
no, there's really nothing now. The only thing now is the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
And
not the Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth.
No, it's Queen Mary. The Queen Mary 2.
I thought it was the QE2.
QE2.
It's Queen Elizabeth.
I could have sworn it was a Queen
okay,
Mary.
You're right.
Okay, I was
there's Queen Mary 2 and Queen Elizabeth 2.
Yeah, okay. That is something that's on my bucket list. It just looks like it's from another world. But as elegant as the Queen Mary is, there's something about liners from a long time ago that just, stirs my desire to time travel.
Okay, wait. I have to, ADD run.
Do it.
Cunard, which owns both the Queen Mary and the Queen
Elizabeth,
has a 21-day Northern Europe cruise, $3,600 per person.
I would totally do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so we'll talk.
Yes.
But first we'll talk about the Normandy.
2023. Well, I mean, 2024, 2023.
Honestly,
Russia.
Whenever. I'll go whenever. And really, who wouldn't want to go back and see all the Cunard or the Red Star or the White Star, all the stars. And when I was growing up, I was obsessed with maritime, really anything.
The Titanic.
Especially the Titanic. And I watched the special, I loved Robert Ballard. I learned about who that was. I learned about what Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute was. When I was in maybe middle school, we went to there's a maritime museum in maybe Newport News or somewhere. And they had a Titanic was Titanic Cunard? Anyway, there was an exhibit, White Star. They had an exhibit about the Titanic, and just seeing those artifacts from the ship, it's just so moving, and to think about the tragedy.
So have you seen the full Titanic exhibit that was really big, I guess?
It was traveling for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fun story. In 2002, I went to the Titanic exhibit in Cleveland.
Oh. Which is on
one of the lakes.
Erie.
It's right beside
so bad. So bad.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, people from Ohio. I should just know this.
Yeah, I should too, but
I should just. I'm right. It's Lake Erie.
It is.
Jeez.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
It is.
When you go to these exhibits, they issue tickets.
Yes.
With the name.
Yes, and they tell you what class you are.
Right.
And you find out if you die.
At the end, yeah. And so I went with my dad and my stepmom, who was pregnant with my little brother at the time. Both me and my dad were in first class, and she was in third class.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh, you're done. Sorry.
So anyway, I'm so sorry. We're not talking about the Titanic.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful, but there's something about the styling of the Normandy that just, it just drips with modern luxury, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what stirs me. And the Normandy was 983 feet long. She was a luxury liner that started her service in May of 1935, and it checks all the boxes. She was fast. She was sexy. She was large.
And in charge.
And she was French. And large and in charge. She truly was in charge of the Atlantic. French's government agreed to spend $60 million on her construction, which at the time was the largest amount spent on a passenger liner. The ship was about style and substance, but its consistently low occupancy never paid the bills. But if you look at the pictures, I think you'd probably agree it was totally worth it. The Normandie was designed by naval architect Vladimir Yurkovich, who combined Russian ingenuity with French design flair. Yes, the Normandie is a French name and a French ocean liner, but believe it or not, the French line, CGT, was founded by Portuguese immigrants. And of course, the ship itself was designed by a Russian. Yurkovich was fairly advanced in his career when he designed the Normandy. He had worked to improve the Russian fleet after their defeat in the Russo-Japanese War in the early 1900s. I'm not going to get into world history. I didn't know about the Russo-Japanese War. I'm sorry, but I didn't. So it was like, I think it was over in 1905.
Yeah, it was in the...
And there was one specific battle that was really terrible, and Yurkovich, like he just wanted to make better boats essentially because they really got soundly defeated. Warships were typically designed to mimic the British dreadnought, but Yurkovich had his own ideas on hull configuration, which were eventually reflected in his stylings for the new modern passenger ships, including Normandy. His design incorporated an aesthetically pleasing flared knife-edge bow that rose to a clipper-style peak. And I will say that in those historic, full-color, large-scale posters that you see of French vacations, you know, you vacation in Cannes, you vacation in, well, I guess that is Côte d'Azur. But anyway, so the Normandy had this poster, and what you see on the poster is just the bow of the ship coming at you. And it reflects the design that I was just telling you about. It's this knife edge that kind of flares at the top, and it's truly like the quintessential modern cruise liner. It's not bulky, and it's just very well designed. Yurkovich had a change in station when he fled Russia after the 1917 revolution. He ended up first in Turkey and then in France. Knowing his talents and not wanting to see them wasted, his second wife, we won't talk about the first wife, his second wife convinced him to keep applying to maritime architecture positions. Second wife was really, really good. She motivated him a lot. His perfect timing landed him at the French line. That's what it was called, like White Star, Cunard. This was called the French line, the country's premier transatlantic carrier. A goal of surpassing other countries' ships in speed, looks, and engineering, he wouldn't take no for an answer to his unorthodox design, and his hull model was adopted in 1929. So he actually did these drawings, and nobody had ever seen anything like it. And so he was able to convince the higher-ups to create a model, like a smaller scale model, that they tested in some sort of a basin. And he was able to convince them that his was better than anything that they had ever seen in speed and design. And so they ended up proceeding with his engineering. Although the French were not politically fond of acknowledging that a Russian was responsible for this magnificent ship evolution, Yurkovich was grateful to the company for giving him the opportunity and accepting his design. He continued to work for the line until he moved with his family to New York in 1937, and most likely would have traveled on the Normandie herself to get from France over to the States. Clever innovations made the ship as lovely as she was smart. Streamlined loading equipment that concealed itself during travel was installed at the bow. This made her aerodynamic and futuristic looking. Another approach to advanced ship design were hidden ventilation shafts. Typically, and I remember this from movies, typically fresh air intakes are visible at the base of the funnels, you know, those big things at the top of the ships. And then you have those other sort of like things that kind of periscope up. There were no such intakes on the Normandy. She used hydroelectric propulsion, and the mechanical system, so AC, what have you, used split exhaust ducts staggered to the exterior hull, allowing for the huge open spaces like the dining hall. So instead of having like ductwork, in a building that crisscrosses spaces and makes you have to hide the unsightly ducts in plenums, or you just have to conceal them, right? So they redirected the ducts to the outer shell of the ship. They split the ducts and it's on the outside so that on the inside you have rooms that are just kind of go on forever and there's nothing to get in the way of your views. In another first, she had one of the earliest radar sets used by a commercial vessel, which benefited the passengers and made it safer to travel on her. A very fun fact about the third stack of the Normandie is that 2 of them worked. One of them, the third stack, was a dummy just because it looked better, because everyone knows that 3 is better than 2. But it actually was functional in that it contained the AC system and dog kennels. So if you were traveling with your pet, the cages in the Normandie, and that also like the noise and whatever smell got away from any passenger areas, and it was held in the third stack on top of the ship. I thought that was fascinating.
That is pretty cool.
People like me were taken then and now by her silhouette and thoughtful design outside, but especially inside. Normandie's passenger breakdown was 848 first class, 670 tourist, which I guess is second class, and 454 third class, totaling 1,972 for those who don't want to do math in their head, which is fine. Incredibly, no 2 first-class cabins were alike, which meant that the different design themes numbered a whopping 400. The deluxe apartments, which would have been my preference, and I would have spent the rest of my life in debt to occupy, had 4 bedrooms, private terrace, a room for the help, because the help, of course,
Yep.
a private dining salon, and some rooms even included baby grand pianos in case anyone wanted to tickle the ivories on their voyage across the Atlantic. Never mind slides, discos, and buffets. The Normandie had a 3-deck high dining hall that could seat 700 guests.
What?
Right? The pictures of this thing are incredible. It looks like it's one of those rooms where there's a mirror, and so it like reflects just to make it look longer and longer and longer.
Oh,
no,
sure.
but it's like one room. To access the dining room, guests pass through a pair of 20-foot tall doors, also incredible. They each have these five medallions on them that are like, I guess, more than dinner plate size, right? Because if they're 20 feet tall. The room that greeted people that passed through these doors was lit by Lalique crystal chandeliers. The room was clad with bas-relief bronze panels, and the entire dining hall outmeasured the Versailles Hall of Mirrors in length. French architects Pierre Patou and Henri Passon were responsible for the layout and decoration of a number of first-class spaces, including the dining room. Patou had previously been commissioned to design the interior of an earlier French liner, the Ile-de-France, completed in 1926 after his design success at the famous Paris Expo of 1925. That's the long, art decoratif where like Art Deco was introduced to society. The nautical style was known as paquebot, or ocean liner, that not surprisingly had an impact on the streamlined modern style. Patou continued to apply the Deco and modern aesthetic to his structures, lending his talents to the 1937 Paris Expo and the French Pavilion at the 1939 World's Fair in New York. On Normandy, the number of gorgeous spaces was seemingly endless. The Grand Salon was designed by another pair of architects, Richard Bouin and Roger Expert. It was furnished with gilded sofas and chairs, upholstered with floral designs and accented with perfectly deco chrome side tables. Floor-mounted 6-tiered torchères were responsible for illuminating the space, which was fitted with 20-foot high glass murals, done in a back painting technique called verre et glomisé by French artist Jean Dupas. One portion of the History of Navigation mural is in the Met in New York. It's in their permanent collection. It's like only one corner of the room, but anyway, at least some of it survives. The pair of Bouin and Expert were also responsible for the smoking room, or fumoir. Lacquer panels decorated the walls in this typically male room that in this case went against tradition became multi-purpose rather than strictly a place where men would gather. There was a theater with a complete stage. Never before